at the end of the day, and that was one of the things that we realized, we weren't utilizing our strengths. We weren't great at interviewing. But what we did know how to do, because we'd been doing it for over a decade, was teach. We knew what a lesson was. We knew how to impart information. We knew how to deliver information. We thought, well, why don't we do a lesson-based show?
Do you want to earn more? Work less and enjoy what you do each day. It's no secret, it can be done. This podcast with Dr. T will not only educate and inspire you, it will also teach you how to do more and be more with the time you already have. It will be like a shot of adrenaline straight into the heart of your business. Here is your host, Tyson Franklin.
Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin and welcome to It's No Secret with Dr. T. Now with me today is a very special person. Her name is Nicole Baldinu. She is from Sydney, Australia. She's done so much in such a short period of time. Well, that's what I think anyway. She is one of the masterminds behind a webinar program called Webinar Ninja. She is one of the co-founders of the $100 MBA show. She has studied at university in Sydney. She's travelled to New York City. She has been absolutely everywhere. Nicole, how are you doing this morning?
I'm great. Thank you so much. Thank you for that lovely intro.
I'm looking forward to this because you and your husband work together, Omar, and Omar has been on my show before. And I love nothing more than seeing couples working together and couples working together successfully. I think it is brilliant to see. My wife and I have always been able to work together with very minimal arguments because I know who the boss is. How have you found working together with Omar?
Yeah, I know we get this question a lot, and I feel like we are fortunate in that way, like you said, that we can work together with minimal arguments. I think it's rare because most people actually come to the question, how on earth can you work together? I would kill my partner if I worked with them. So I think with us, the foundation that we had before we were romantically linked, was a working relationship. So I think there was that foundation before that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we were colleagues. So it's just kind of.
Were you Omar's boss, or was he your boss, or you were neither?
He was my boss.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but we didn't have too much to do with each other even though he was the head of department. But I just think there was just knowing him from that working context before. Yeah. Helped establish that. I don't know if that's the only reason. I do feel like there could be other personality dynamics. Like you said playfully, who's the boss.
Yeah.
I think when you respect each other's strengths and know what your weaknesses are, and you know that you can just count on that other person to have your back in the areas that maybe you're not so great in, I think that helps a lot as well.
Yeah. Well, my wife and my wife was actually a patient, but I didn't hook up with her while she was a patient.
Oh, it's funny. Same with us. We didn't hook up while we were working.
Yeah, she was a patient, and so I got to know her a little bit as a patient. And I remember her as clear as day. And so is she. The first day we met as patient and podiatrist, yeah. and the whole time I'm talking, I'm going, this woman is so amazing. There's just something about her that I just can't get it out of my head. And then a couple of years had passed, but it was because of those couple of meetings we had prior to when I did actually see her in a social situation. It was really easy for me to walk up and talk to her because we already knew each other. It wasn't like I was trying to just pick her up from the other side of the room with one of my smooth lines that was never going to work.
Yeah, it's funny because I always think like in the world of teaching, because that's where Omar and I came from, there's always going to be gripes with your bosses or with colleagues. I mean, I just think it's normal workplace issues that, affect everyone. But I always think that, and I think it's funny that, years later I look back and I think I never had a bad word to say about him. Like I just thought he was always a really nice guy. Yeah. Even though I didn't know too much about him, I thought he's a nice guy.
Where were you working at the time?
This was in Dubai.
Oh, Dubai. Okay. What were you both doing there?
So I was teaching. So in my former life before entrepreneurship, I was a high school and university teacher. I studied languages, and then I studied English as a second language. And that took me to Japan. It took me to Dubai eventually. And then when I left teaching and I moved to New York, that's when Omar and I hooked up and we started working together.
Okay, but you met Omar in Dubai?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so he was teaching there as well?
Yes.
Because I know his background. I know he was a teacher as well. Then you both went to New York City, and that's where you sort of hooked up.
Yeah, so I went to New York to study film because I wanted to leave teaching. I'd had 12 years in as a teacher, and I thought I want to do something different. I want to do something creative. So I went to New York. I studied film, and then as soon as I graduated, I started freelancing, and it was then that we hooked up, and it was then that I realized, this is such a different world now. Setting your own rates, negotiating, with potential clients. The work and how much they're going to pay you. And I really felt like I don't have a lot of experience in this. And he had he'd been building side businesses on the side like for years. So he had that kind of savviness already. He wasn't afraid to ask, for certain rates. And so that's where he helped me. And then it was just kind of organically that I was helping him as he started his business consulting, that we just started naturally working together and then combined, the skills that I'd learned at New York Film Academy, his entrepreneurial skills, and then, the rest is history. But it kind of happened very organically, and I kind of relied on him at the beginning to, transition out of teaching into doing my own thing.
Okay, so when you're at the film school in New York City, what was the business that you started after that? Was it doing video or production?
Yes. So I basically was I'd sort of learnt to be behind the camera, to edit videos. And so I started picking up clients. It ended up being like I picked up one financial kind of client. And so from then on, because my portfolio started, having all these financially inclined videos, I started picking up more work in that industry. So I'd film maybe an event or a kind of documentary style video to put on their website to get more clients. So I was doing the filming, I was editing. It was just basically just me freelancing and promoting my services that way.
So you never wanted to get in front of the camera? It was always going to be behind the scenes?
Yeah, I was always behind the scenes. Definitely, I enjoyed being behind the camera, and I enjoyed like editing.
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with that. Not that you couldn't be in front of the camera. There's nothing saying you couldn't be in front of the camera. But I do know what you mean. Some people would rather be more the creative person behind it and making it all happen than actually being the star out the front. Which leads me on to your podcast, the $100 MBA show, where Omar is the person who's out the front. Who does the whole hey how you doing? It's Omar Zenheimer on the $100 MBA show. I can impersonate him really well because I've listened to it enough times.
I know.
When you decided to start doing the podcast, what came first, Webinar Ninja or the podcast?
Oh, so even before the podcast came the $100 MBA program, which is 180 video lessons, and it teaches people the fundamentals of starting a business. So that's how we started combining our skills. Actually, that was the first project that we worked together.
Was that a video series?
Yes. So and it still exists. So he had an idea for the $100 MBA, which would be a series of videos, because he'd been to business school, dropped out, and realized, to be an entrepreneur, you don't need to go to business school. So we decided to create these videos. So that's where I was like, okay, I'll be behind the camera. That's awesome. I'll film it. And I'll do all the editing, and he's in front of the camera doing, delivering the content. So that came actually before. That was in December of 2013 that we launched the $100 MBA. And then so the podcast came in August of 2014. So about 9 months after that. But in between that, we were running webinars to draw members into the community of the $100 MBA. And it was then that Omar was running webinars and Frankensteining it with all these different tools. And it was there that Webinar Ninja came about from then. So
okay, so it was a gradual process of the videos, and then the $100 video series, 180 of them. That's a lot of videos, and that's still available now. People can get that.
We've closed for subscriptions, but people they do still exist. They're lifetime members, so the videos are there for the community.
I think I'm a lifetime member.
You are a lifetime member.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the podcast came from that.
Yes. So we had a failed podcast in between.
Oh, I remember you mentioning that once. Yeah.
And so we were doing that podcast. It was called People Who Know Their SHIT.
Yeah.
We were interviewing entrepreneurs, and that's when I tried to get in front of the kind of on the mic, and I was co-hosting the show with Omar, and it was then that it was really solidified. Like, no, this is not what I enjoy at all. So we were running those interviews to add to the library of the $100 MBA. So we, they were kind of bonuses for community members to, hear these interviews. And it was then that the podcast, didn't do so great in the audio format, because we were actually repurposing the video content into audio to create the podcast, and we all know what happens when that happens. It was a disaster, and so the podcast didn't work out, and so that's when we went to town and decided, okay, we're going to do this right, and we're going to actually have a podcast that actually is in line with the brand, the $100 MBA.
Was there one thing that made you go, we're doing the wrong thing? Was there one thing other than no one listening to it, or you had people listening to it and it just didn't feel right?
There was so many things that were wrong with it. Yeah, we gave it a good go, 45 episodes, which I think is a good run, just to kind of test it out. We weren't getting the downloads we wanted. We realized it wasn't on brand. We realized we weren't great at interviewing.
Yeah.
We realized that I wasn't doing a great job as a co-host. I didn't actually really even enjoy it. And it was just, it didn't align obviously with the $100 MBA. So there was just a number of things that we said, okay, this is not actually what a great podcast looks like. You can't just kind of hodgepodge it together and think, oh, okay, we've got this video show and then let's turn it into an audio show as well. So it didn't, there were multiple things that were wrong with it. And then when we stripped it all back, we realized, okay, this is actually what it takes to make a great show. And we just stopped everything, dropped clients, and went to town with the $100 MBA. And, it was testament to doing something really, really badly to know what something great looks like, because, 3 months later we win Best of iTunes, which was insane, considering.
I know, 2014 Best of iTunes, which when I look at the heights that you guys have reached now with the $100 MBA show and everything else you seem to be doing, it was only 4 years ago.
I know, and and I'm very proud of that. But sometimes I just think you just keep moving forward. You don't stop to look back. So thank you. That's true. It's a reminder.
So with the original show that you had, that was A Dog's Breakfast. We can say that about that now, because it was. I haven't listened to it, but is it available anywhere if people want to listen to it and go, wow, that's how bad they were? So they can see, because sometimes we only ever see people in their successful moments. We don't get to see what they were like when they were really bad.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have that. I mean, gosh, for him 10 years ago, for us, I feel like it's only 4 years ago.
I know.
It feels even like more recent than that. I think Omar and I will cringe if we listen to the first few episodes of the $100 MBA, like probably the first 100 episodes. I mean, now that we're over 1,000 episodes, definitely there's cringeworthy stuff there. With People Who Know Their SHIT, you as a lifetime member of the $100 MBA can at least see those videos, because they do exist still in the community. I haven't even done a search in iTunes. I don't even know if we took down the feed. I should know that.
It might still be there. But this is interesting. So you found it.
I think it is still there, yeah.
You found it. You didn't like doing interviews. Is that why even the $100 MBA show, they are teaching episodes? Omar gets on there and he teaches a certain thing, which I always say it is of all my podcasts, it is still one of my favorite podcasts I listen to on a regular basis. And then he also has guest teachers, on which I've been one, which was fun. Mm-hmm. And I think you had a bit of a laugh at some of my comments. But
I enjoy that one a lot, yes.
Is that why he doesn't do interviews? Because he felt he's better as a teacher than he is as an interviewer?
I mean, at the end of the day, and that was one of the things that we realized, we weren't utilizing our strengths. We weren't great at interviewing. But what we did know how to do, because we'd been doing it for over a decade, was teach. We knew what a lesson was. We knew how to impart information. We knew how to deliver information. We thought, well, why don't we do a lesson-based show? And initially I had been listening also because my other passion is languages. I'd listened to Coffee Break French, Coffee Break Spanish. And I said, there's no business lessons. This was back in 2014. I didn't see a show that was just purely lesson based. So
Yeah.
I thought, well, this is a perfect opportunity to marry your skills and what's, kind of missing in the podcasting space. And definitely that was so much easier for Omar to do and for both of us to do, and than sit there and try and refine the skill of interviewing, which, wasn't something that we were particularly gifted at, and, would have taken a lot longer to perfect.
I reckon it's good to identify what your strengths are and what your weaknesses were, and not just keep, like I said before, flog a dead horse when you know that it wasn't actually going anywhere. And actually because I do I call it 5 Minute Friday on a Friday, which usually goes for about 10 minutes, which I've sort of probably got to change the name. But I came up with doing that based off of one of Omar's episodes. And he was talking about, like doing shorter lessons, but also when it came to doing a shorter lesson is having notes, like writing a good script and following your script. You might go off script a little bit, but if you can follow a nice script, especially like his type of show where it is an education show, that I think he did mention earlier on, he didn't write as good a notes, and he sort of waffled around a little bit. And he said there's nothing worse than people not sure what they're doing. But now it is so structured, but it doesn't sound structured.
Yeah, I mean, and that comes from teaching. You'd never walk. I mean, how many times did I walk into a classroom winging it, and it was a complete disaster? And I didn't do that. I didn't do that too many times because it just wouldn't work. You'd have to have at least the skeleton of how your lesson's going to start and end, and where you want the students to go from the beginning to the end. So that does come from teaching, just purely it's not going to work if you're going to wing it.
No, I think that is great advice, and anyone listening to this, just take that on board. Go with your strengths, and if something isn't working, maybe it's time to stop, or not completely stop, but just change what you're doing.
And don't be afraid, because I mean, the fact that we just accepted, oh, this is not working. Because, when you start that podcast, when you start that show with, oh, this is going to be amazing. We all have that, right? It's great. Yeah. You need to have that hope. You need to have that drive. You need to have that ambition. But, the sooner you realize that it's okay to go, you know what, like this isn't working. This isn't good. It's okay. Let's just try something different. The better off you'll be.
Did it feel like at one stage there you think, oh, we're failures, we should give up on the whole podcasting thing? Or do you go, no, we're just not playing to our strengths?
Oh gosh, I don't remember. I think I was really confident when we started working on the $100 MBA show. I think it was so clear what went wrong with the other show. I don't know. I felt like it was very clear what was wrong and what we needed to do to fix it. So I was pretty confident, and I do feel like we poured our heart and soul into it. Not to say that just because you do that it's going to be a success. But I don't know. For some reason, I just felt we had learned some huge lessons, and I was confident when we released the $100 MBA show. I mean, we always joke because the day that we got, and I don't mean it to sound like I'm bragging. Oh, it is a really proud moment for us. But when he said, oh, I think we won Best of iTunes, and I said, yeah, I knew we would. And I mean, that just sounds crazy because I'm not the most confident person in the world. But for some reason, that just felt right,
Yeah.
And he just looked at me like, when he's like, yeah, I knew we were going to win it.
Yeah, never any doubt. Never any doubt.
Which is crazy. It's crazy because it's not like my character at all. But yeah, I don't know. Some things are clearer to you along the way.
Because you guys also have like the Business Republic.
So Business Republic was our umbrella company in the US.
Yeah.
Since we've relocated to Australia, we've registered a new business name called Team On. So
Team On.
On. Can you guess what ON stands for? It's Omar and Nicole.
Oh my God. I'm thinking like it's on fire. It's on point. It's like turn yourself on.
Well, that's the thing. We liked it because it is all about being switched on. It is kind of embodies our just overall culture of just getting things done, being on, pivoting, learning to change, adapting, being swithed on. So
what do you offer at Team On? What's Team On offer people?
So Team On, so our solutions are Webinar Ninja is a product under Team On, as well as the as well as a $100 MBA.
Okay. And do you guys do business coaching for people as well? Do you coach people through different struggles they're having with business, or you don't?
Not so much now. Omar used to do a lot more of that. I mean, he runs his weekly webinars.
Yeah.
He'll run master classes for people that sign up. So they are coaching classes essentially for people that do sign up for Webinar Ninja. So he does it more, not so one-on-one, more one-to-many.
One-to-many. Well, it's an easy way to do it. But I just think going back to that whole thing about when to make that pivot and shift is just so important. Because I've seen a lot of businesses where they've got a product, for example, and they want to sell this product, but there's no profit in the product. And so by the time they go through everything, there's like 10 cents per thing. They've got to sell millions of them to make any money, and no one's going to want to buy millions of them. So they don't know when to go. It might be a good product, but it's just not going to be viable.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that means doing your maths right at the start, really.
Yeah, bringing a maths teacher. So, and then you started Webinar Ninja, and I do recall part of the story that you were using other webinar platforms, and they just weren't doing what you wanted them to do, and then you started developing your own from there.
Yeah, so Omar started running webinars, and he was basically just hodgepodging the whole thing because he was using, something, I think it was maybe Google Hangouts to broadcast. He was using a different chat software. He was using something for his landing pages. So he was using all these different tools and putting those together to put the webinar together every week. And it was just so much more trouble than it was worth. But obviously webinars were, he saw the power in running webinars and the effect that they had. So he's like, okay, I've got to keep going. So that's when he decided to put something together with a freelance developer. And then he started using that for the webinars for the community. And that's when people started asking, hey, what are you using to run this webinar? And it was literally something he had just got a developer to put together for him.
Yeah.
And then, the question came, can we buy it? And it was like, what? Okay, let's, get that sales page up.
So it wasn't started as a commercial venture. It was just started as to fulfill a need. Mm-hmm. And the commercial side of it came afterwards.
Yeah, and then we pre-sold. The first version, the beta version, before actually having the product, and we sold out in. It was like under 48 hours. We had 250 buyers just for the.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so that's what we used to invest into building the first version, and now in September of last year we released version 5. So it's been through a lot of iterations, a lot of changes, and it's all based on.
I have version 5.
You do. You come in the best time.
And you reckon having webinars that really helped build and drive your business by having that regular interaction with people, being able to answer questions when they had a question, in that like you said, it's like live being there, without them being in front of you.
I think that's the thing that people realize how crazy it is when they actually do start running webinars, how much they were missing out on, because you have such an opportunity to build trust with your audience. You're right there and there. You're on camera. You don't even have to be on camera, but the fact that you're there live and people can hear your voice. Yeah. They'll post something in the chat. You respond to it. They'll ask a question. You call them out by their name. It really is the closest thing to being in person. And so the fact that you can build that much trust with an audience is pretty amazing. I mean, that's why we're pretty much in love with the technology of it.
So when Omar is actually running the webinar, you're in the background monitoring the comments and helping me out. Is that right?
So I'll be just like an attendee. So I'm in the chat. So I'm, chatting with the attendees. The questions will come under the video as well, because we separate the questions in the chat. So at the end, I will answer questions. So, if I have a chance to answer someone's question directly, I will. And I'm just engaging and participating, and it's awesome. I have actually a lot of fun. Like, I know it's a lot of pressure. He's on camera. He might have, the more difficult task, but I really enjoy talking to. Some of them are members. We do members webinars as well. Some of them are members who just show up to his webinars. Some of them are potential, people that are just interested, just stopping by, wanting to learn from the workshop.
Yeah.
And I just learned so much from interacting and just from hearing people from all over the world, show up. It's awesome. You'll be talking to someone who's in Denmark, someone who's in the States, people here in Australia. It's a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun.
So if somebody was a one person operation, they didn't have someone in the background and they're running the webinar, is it difficult running the webinar and then also looking at the chat box and trying to keep yourself focused on what you're doing, or is it better to have somebody on the side if you can?
I don't think it's necessary to have somebody on doing my role. Obviously, the way we designed it was, again, with that kind of educational point in mind. So the questions do get separated from the chat, and it's really all about your delivery. So if you're meeting and greeting, obviously a great way to start a webinar is to meet and greet your audience and just to kind of, ice break or whatever. And so you'd be asking them, hey, just introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us where you're coming from. So, at that opportunity, you'd be everything's in one place on one screen. So you'd just be looking at the chat window and going, oh, cool. I see, John's coming in from Arizona. Awesome. Whatever. And as people come in, you talk to them. And then, you might go ahead with your presentation. You obviously outline what's going to be happening today. And then when there's that time for the questions, you just look and go, okay, I'm going to be answering the first question there. And you just start answering it. So I think it comes down to the way you're organized as well.
Yeah. So it's how you structure it. It's how you structure because I have gone on some webinars where I know it's just one person running the show, and they do the introduction, they get people to introduce themselves, and then they do go through a certain point and they'll say, has anyone got a question? So they're now focused on the questions that are coming through. Then they move on to the next part. So, yeah.
And just do the first one. Get the first one. And it's like the first time with anything, right? The first time we do something, it's always we're fearful or it doesn't maybe work out great.
Yeah.
But that's fine. And it's with anything in life. The second time you do it, you're always going to be so much better than the first time around.
And when Omar was on my podcast, I said then that I was going to do the webinar, and I started and I uploaded it. And then the chicken button came up, and I didn't end up pushing it. so this time I have to do it. So with you got the webinar, you got Webinar Ninja, and the $100 MBA show, and you run a remote team, pretty much. Mm-hmm. So you've got, how many people have you got working with you or associated with you that you guys are looking after all around the world?
So our team is fully remote. We've got there's a mix of full-time and people that are part-time contractors and freelancers. So all up, it's close to 30.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big team.
Yeah, and this week has been a big week. We've doubled our customer service team. We've had 4 new customer service agents come on board and they start their training. So we're growing. So that so now it should be more than 30. But yeah, they're fully remote. They're completely distributed around the world.
So how do you communicate? What's your mode of communication when you're talking to people around the world? Do you drag them into one chat room, like on Zoom, or do you do it through your own Webinar Ninja program? Do you get them on there and everyone chats that way? How do you do it?
No, Zoom is a great meeting software. So when we do, sometimes we use Skype or sometimes we use Google Hangouts. Zoom is great for meeting all hands. So if we want to bring everyone in one, we usually do that once a month. We'll have an all hands meeting, which is just great because everyone gets to talk to each other from different departments, and it's just sharing updates and company updates and stuff like that. It's less formal because we'll have the in department meetings that are more regular. They're every week. So we'll use Zoom for that. We obviously have other tools that we use, like Basecamp is our project management. So that's the majority of communication and to-dos and tasks and departmental kind of communication happens on Basecamp. We use Slack. We rarely use email anymore. It's mainly Basecamp, Slack, and then just jumping on a video call.
Okay. Have you ever used Voxer?
No. The name's not unfamiliar.
Yeah,
Voxer,
Voxer. No, I've just been using it with another group that I work with, and everyone within that group communicates using Voxer. It's probably very similar to Slack or one of those other programs. And it's good that you can just send voice messages to each other and then they get a message straight away that it's there and they can message back. But
Oh, okay.
I think it's great that you're using. I like how you've got so many options in what you're doing when it comes to it. Have you come up with the different options because different people in your team like to be communicated with a different way? So you're not telling them this is how you must do it.
Yeah, that's interesting because when we introduced Basecamp last year, because we were kind of a little bit more all over the place. We'd used more like Google Apps, Slack, Skype, and then we thought, okay, let's bring all our project management and our team management to Basecamp. But the development team, the developers, they love Slack, and Slack is great. So just for organizing conversations. So we couldn't get them off Slack for their own, for internal conversations within the teams, the developers I'm talking about. So we kept Slack, but a lot of the engineers will talk on and communicate on Basecamp as well. And we recently started using Trello. We tried not to overcomplicate it and introduce too many tools. So we started creating our team handbook this year, which was something that we're building right now, which is really exciting, just to localize information all in one place. And we were going to use a completely different app, completely different tool, and and get everybody on board with that. And then we just realized, well, hang on, we can actually use Trello, which we're using now to track our bugs for Webinar Ninja. Why don't we use that for the handbook? Everyone's already on there. They already know how to use it. And and you can organize your whole company handbook on Trello as well. So we thought, okay, let's minimize the learning curve there. Because I do think you can get in the habit of just, using a lot of tools and expecting that it's
yourself.
Overtool yourself.
Overtool yourself. Yeah.
That's a word. And and then it's just like you think it's a good idea, but then you realize, okay, they might not say that they don't want to or that they're annoyed or whatever, but you just kind of get that feeling as like, okay, we don't need to learn another tool. We use one that we're currently using.
No, I think keeping things as simple as possible is always a benefit, but there's a lot of because like I'll talk to different people in different industries and everybody uses something different. Yeah, they've got their favorites, and I know some people are inflexible, that they'll just say, no, this is how we're doing it, and they will not change in any other way. And I was introduced recently to, even just for podcasting, just another platform I hadn't used. I'd heard of it, but I hadn't used it, called Squadcast, I think it was.
Okay, I haven't heard.
Just another online platform where you can link and do recordings, and even Google Hangouts. I hadn't used that before until about 2 weeks ago, because somebody said, no, I only use Google Hangouts.
Yeah.
I went, okay, I'll go and check it out. And it was good. So
it's great.
All these different options. I like all the different options, and I like the different way that people actually use them. So if people want to get hold of you, Nicole, how do they find you? I know everything, but do you want to tell them?
I'm on Twitter. It's just my full name, Nicole. I think there's an underscore.
There is an
underscore. The great thing about my name is that it's I think I am the only Nicole Baldinu in the world. So it's Nicole _Baldinu on Twitter. So it's pretty easy to find me there. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. And to find your businesses, Webinar Ninja, it's webinarninja.com, and the it's $100MBA.net.
Correct, yeah.
And if you want to get to the show, you go /show to actually find the show. But I'll have all that in the show notes anyway. I've got one last question for you, and this is the question I ask everybody towards the end of the show, so anyone listening knows what's coming up. I should change it one day just to mess with everyone's head. Okay. And it's Monday morning. And somebody bumps into you at a coffee shop. They go, oh, "You're Nicole. You're the only Nicole Baldinu in the world." And I'm about to head into work. It's Monday morning. When I sit down, what's the number one bit of advice you'd give me to start my week off the best way?
Oh, okay. You really need to get to work on the important stuff first, because I think as entrepreneurs, and your to-do list is so long and you can do so many things. Maybe I'm not the only one that does this, but I feel like I would always do the easy stuff first, or the things that I could get done really quickly. I think we fall into that, but I think you've really got to knock out the most important stuff before you do all the easy stuff. And I've been really working on that, over the last 6 months, and it's really changed my productivity and workflow. So don't procrastinate over the hard stuff. get that done first.
Yeah, I must admit, I'll look at my whole list and I'll go, I'll do this one first because it's fun. So, I actually, like editing the podcast. I actually really, really enjoy the editing process because it's fun going through it. I like writing the show notes. I like listening back to what my guest said. I like applying what I've learnt. And because that's all fun, I could tend to do that, whereas there's other things that I probably should be getting done and I don't do them. So I think
I know. I'm guilty of it too. Yeah. But I think it really makes a huge difference once you stop doing that.
No, that's great. That's a great tip to finish on. So, Nicole, thank you very much for coming on It's No Secret with Dr. T. This has been fun. And when you see Omar, can you give him a big hug for me? And just say, this is from Tyson. Don't squeeze him on the bum or anything like that, because that could be a little bit awkward.
No, but he loves you. You've been such a great support and fan of the show. Yeah, we love your work too. So I definitely will. It's mutual. And
I will see you in Brisbane.
Yes, I can't wait.
We are podcast. I've bought my ticket, so I've got it locked in. So I definitely will be down there. So enjoy the rest of this week.
Thank you so much. You too. I had so much fun. I can't believe this. Yeah, this was just a really easy conversation. So thank you so much. I had a lot of fun and I can't wait for Brisbane. It's going to be awesome.
It will be great. So I'll see you down there. Bye.
Bye.
I think you'd have to agree that Nicole is extremely honest and it was a very refreshing conversation. She didn't hide anything. She didn't try and make out that her and Omar knew everything and that everything just fell into place for them and they were immediate success. They tried something. They worked at what their strengths were. They worked at what their weaknesses were. And once they were identified, they weren't afraid to actually make the change that needed to be made. I think that is a point that you need to remember. If things aren't working out, take a step back, try and figure out why. And are you running with your strengths or are you trying to run with your weaknesses that you probably shouldn't be? And the other point that I think is worth mentioning again was when Nicole said, when you do something the first time, it can be a little bit fearful. It can be a little bit scary. But when you do it the second time, it gets a bit easier. And the third, fourth, and fifth time, you sort of sit back and you wonder, what was I worried about in the first place? So now I'm at that point where I get to tell you a little bit about next week's guest. She is from San Diego. She has a psychology background, but she's also a copywriter, and she knows how to make copy pop off the page. Here's a little snippet of what's coming up next week.
That I think it took me a couple years to unlearn some of that conditioning that you also experienced of like a paragraph must be 4 to 6 sentences minimum. And, you know, I think the academic writing is also, let me cram in as many big words and fluff to make it seem like I know what I'm talking about and go on and on and on. But really, when it comes to being compelling for business, you need to get to the point. Less is more. Give that white space, give that space to let the words breathe so that people can scan. We are scanning readers more so than just sit down and slog through giant blob readers at this point. So I also love bullets. So if you're going to say, I do the following 4 things, please don't write it in a long sentence that turns into, looks like a giant blob. Just say, I do the following things, bullet 1, bullet 2, bullet 3, and then I can scan it. And it makes me feel like I'm not reading so much, but I'm still getting the same information processed through my head faster.
Believe me when I tell you, you're going to go away from this particular episode far more intelligent than when you arrived, because I got so much out of the conversation myself, and I know that you will as well. So before I go, just remember, if you ever have any questions about this particular episode or previous episodes, send me an email, tf@tysonfranklin.com, and I'd love your feedback. And if you don't want to send an email, feel free to leave a review on iTunes or your favorite podcast platform. I will really appreciate it. Social proof does so much for podcasting. It's hard to explain, but the more reviews you get, the more people tend to listen to your show. So that's it from me. Look after yourself, look after your family, and I will talk to you again next week. Bye for now.